In the quiet depths of your being, where doubt and longing intertwine, have you ever questioned your place in the grand tapestry of existence? Neville Goddard's teachings reveal a revolutionary truth. You are not a victim of circumstance, but the architect of your reality. To be anointed is to awaken to your divine identity, God individualized. Imagination is not fantasy. It's the breath of creation itself. As Neville taught, imagination is God in man. This journey will guide you through 10 signs of your anointing, each rooted in the timeless law. As within, so without. In the silent theater of your mind, the drama of existence unfolds, a tapestry woven not by fate, but by the loom of your own consciousness. You are both the dreamer and the dream, the sculptor and the clay. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10 whispers not from some distant heaven, but from the depths of your awareness. Here, in this sanctum, the law of consciousness declares, the world you inhabit is the shadow cast by the light of your assumptions. Consider the artist, once shackled by the specter of insignificance. Her days were spent in lamentation, her canvases untouched by acclaim, until she dared to revise the script of her soul. I am celebrated, she repeated, not as a plea to the void, but as a command to the divine within. The outer world, ever obedient, rearranged itself. Galleries called. Critics marveled, not because luck smiled, but because she ceased to kneel to circumstance, and instead wore her new name like a crown. Her story is no parable of chance, but proof that consciousness is the only reality. To walk this path is to recognize that every trial is a merciless mirror. The quarrelsome colleague, the unpaid bill, the ache of loneliness, these are not curses to evade, but symbols crying out for interpretation. They reflect the unclaimed territories of your inner world, the fragments of self yet unloved. When you curse the reflection, you wage war on yourself. Awakening begins the moment you ask, what state have I clothed myself in, that this shadow clings to me? Silence, in this sacred calculus, is not passive emptiness. It is the fertile void where old selves dissolve and new identities are born. Retreat inward, as Moses retreated into the wilderness, and let the I am reverberate until doubt trembles. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled until it saturates your being, for assumptions, once hardened into fact. Sculpt the marble of reality. Time is but a veil, thin and trembling, when you dare to dwell in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. The law of assumption teaches that creation is not a process, it is a finished work. Your task is not to build, but to inhabit, not to chase, but to become. Ruth, the foreigner-turned matriarch, understood this alchemy. Her words, "Your people will be my people," Ruth 1:16, were not a hope, but a decree. By assuming the state of belonging, she stepped into a destiny that birthed kings. The world bends to those who wear their desires as present truths, for assumption is the forge where futures are welded to the now. Consider the writer, adrift in a sea of rejection. Each returned manuscript whispered failure until he abandoned the illusion of delay. Each night, he closed his eyes and lived, signing books, shaking hands, hearing crowds murmur his name like a psalm. He did not manifest, he remembered. Within months, the outer world caught up to his inner certainty. His novel ascended charts, not because he labored harder, but because he ceased to beg and began to be. Such is the secret. Feeling is the bridge between the imagined and the real. To live in the end is to let go of time's leash. The child who dreams of adulthood does not calculate years. He thrills in the thrill of growth. So too must you occupy your desire as a current fact, not a distant prize. Feel the joy of fulfillment now, and the path to its embodiment unfolds organically, for assumption, when sustained, compresses eternity into moments. The ancients called it faith. Goddard named it the law. The test of mastery lies in your relationship with desire. Does it still feel like a wish, or has it crystallized into memory? The writer knew he had succeeded not when the contract arrived, but when the act of signing books in his mind carried the weight of ritual, not fantasy. Your deepest longings are already yours in the unseen. To realize them, you must collapse the distance between I will be and I am, until only the latter remains. Adversity here is not a foe, but a tutor. When delays taunt you, they ask, how deeply have you assumed your wish fulfilled? Persist, as Ruth persisted, and the invisible ripens into visibility. The world is an echo chamber. What you assume within, it must reflect without. Your mind is a temple of whispers, and every silent word is a prayer the universe answers. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Proverbs 18:21. Not the tongue of flesh, but the one that speaks in the vault of your imagination. Here, in this sanctum, your inner dialogues draft the blueprint of your days. To fret I can't is to kneel to limitation. To declare I am is to anoint yourself sovereign. The CEO, once paralyzed by indecision, learned this sacred syntax. She replaced her litany of doubt with a single mantra: I am decisive. Her inner critic, starved of attention, withered. Within weeks, her team's chaos crystallized into order, their productivity a mirror of her clarified mind. The law is ruthless in its fairness, as within, so without. This is the alchemy of mental speech. For 7 nights, let your doubts dissolve into I am, not as empty affirmation, but as a lived truth. Assume the voice of the version of you who has already triumphed. By the 7th day, synchronicities will bloom like roses in a desert, for the outer world is but a lagging echo of your inner sound. Mastery reveals itself when your self-talk shifts from critic to sage. No longer do you plead for validation, you command creation. The ceaseless chatter softens into guidance, gentle and sure, for you've remembered, every triumph begins as a whispered truth in the sanctum of your soul. The final revelation: you are not preparing to write your script. You are already writing it. One silent I am at a time. Close the door to doubt and let the temple bells ring. Existence is a boundless garden, every state of being a seed waiting to flower in the soil of your awareness. Poverty and abundance, fear and faith, limitation and freedom, each blooms in the eternal now, its vibrancy determined not by circumstance, but by which state you water with your attention. You are the gardener, and your mind is the gate. I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life. Deuteronomy 30:19. To choose is not to struggle, but to surrender to a new assumption. Jonah, swallowed by the whale of his own despair, revised his script. He traded Nineveh will fall for Nineveh will rise, Jonah 3:3-10, and an entire city transformed. His story unveils the law. States are costumes, not cages. Shift from victim to victor as effortlessly as tuning a radio. For every frequency of being already exists. You need only claim it. Consider the entrepreneur who faced financial ruin. Where others saw collapse, he paused and asked, "What state am I wearing?" Shedding the cloak of ruin, he clothed himself in "I am abundant" until invoices became opportunities, setbacks became setups. Within months, contracts flowed like rivers in a once parched land. The law cares not for appearances, only allegiance. To walk this path is to realize that adversity is not a verdict, but a mirror. When doubt gnaws or lack looms, ask, "Which seed have I planted in the garden of my mind?" For the external world is a shadow puppet show, its figures dancing to the rhythm of your inner claims. Linger in lack and deserts spread. Occupy abundance and orchards rise. Mastery reveals itself when you greet crises as compasses. The missed promotion, the fractured relationship, these are not punishments, but prompts to return to the state where your desire is already flesh. Assume victory first, and the path reveals itself. The final truth? You are always choosing, even in silence. For the garden grows wild when neglected, yet flourishes when tended with deliberate grace. Water the state you wish to harvest, and watch reality bend to meet you. The infinite is yours to inhabit, no permission required. Step into the bloom. The past is not a tomb, but a text, a story etched in the ink of memory, awaiting your editorial hand. Time, that great illusion, bends to the weight of imagination, for consciousness alone dictates what is fixed. To revise the past is to reclaim your role as author, not prisoner. Behold, I make all things new. Revelation 21:5 is not a divine promise, but a human mandate. You hold the pen. Take the veteran, once shackled to visions of bloodshed and loss. Each night, he returned to the battlefield, not to relive, but to revise. In the theater of his mind, explosions softened into handshakes, enemies became brothers, and trauma dissolved into tales of resilience. He did not deny history, he redeemed it. Within weeks, his waking hours echoed this inner alchemy. Nightmares ceased, relationships healed, and forgiveness flowed like a river through once barren land. The law is clear. Revise the past, and the present bows. Here lies the practice. Each evening, pluck one thread from the tapestry of memory. Reweave it stitch by stitch in the loom of your mind. Feel the warmth of a reconciled conversation where cold words once hung. Hear laughter where silence festered. Saturate the scene with the emotion of what should have been, until the old narrative withers, powerless. Sorrow cannot survive the oxygen of revision. Life whispers in symbols, a celestial script etched into the mundane. The stalled train, the flickering street lamp, the stranger who speaks your mother's name. These are not accidents, but oracles. The heavens declare the glory of God, Psalm 19:1. Yet his voice is not in the thunder, but the tremor of a leaf, as Elijah discovered, 1 Kings 19:12. To the awakened, every moment is a hieroglyph awaiting interpretation, every delay a parable in disguise. Consider the woman trapped in gridlock, late for the meeting that would decide her fate. Where others fumed, she stilled her mind and heard the whisper, "This is your Red Sea." Instead of cursing delay, she chose trust. Within the hour, detours led her to a chance encounter, a client who doubled her revenue. The law is unyielding. Obstacles are invitations to remember who you are. What the world calls coincidence is simply God's vocabulary for those who listen. Synchronicities, the recurring numbers, the heart-shaped cloud. the song that answers your unspoken question, are not quirks of chaos, but love letters from the divine. They are the alphabet of a hidden tongue, spelling out guidance for those who dare to see. The businessman who kept glimpsing 1111 dismissed it as chance, until he paused, silenced his cynicism, and asked, "What is being asked of me here?" Clarity dawned. It was a nudge to launch the idea he'd shelved. The project became his legacy. To master this language is to recognize that life's interruptions are its most profound prayers. The missed flight, the lost key, the argument that reroutes your day, each carries a fingerprint of grace. Your task is not to decode with the intellect, but to feel the symbol's resonance. What does this moment reflect of your inner state? What frequency are you being called to occupy? I am the resurrection and the life. John 11:25. Not as proclamation from a distant Messiah, but as the anthem of your own awakened imagination. The promise is this: Christ is your divine self, God individualized as you. To know this is to shatter the illusion of separation, for the Savior you seek dwells not in heaven's throne room, but in the sacred depths of your consciousness. Consider the nurse, her spirit worn thin by the grind of sterile halls and unyielding suffering. One morning, she dared to claim, "I am healing," not as a plea, but as a coronation. The words, once hollow, ignited a fire within. Patients began to rally under her care. Colleagues adopted her methods. Protocols shifted as if moved by unseen hands. Her outer world, once a mirror of exhaustion, now reflected her inner decree. This is the law in its purest form. To embody the Christ within is to wield the creative force of God. The promise is not mystical abstraction, but practical revelation. I and the Father are one. John 10:30 is the cosmic truth etched into your being. The veil of otherness dissolves when you recognize that every face, every struggle, every joy you encounter is a reflection of your infinite self. The beggar, the tyrant, the lover, each is a facet of the Christ you are here to awaken. To judge another is to condemn a shadow of your own soul. To love them is to sanctify it. The sign of this awakening? You no longer walk as a beggar pleading for miracles, but as a conscious co-creator, radiating the certainty that God's will is your will. Your hands, once seen as frail and finite, become instruments of the divine. The meal you serve, the comfort you offer, the truth you speak, these are not good deeds, but sacraments, holy acts through which the Christ within consecrates the world. To live the promise is to realize there is no you and God. There's only I am, dancing as the many. The nurse healed not by effort, but by remembrance. The veteran revised his past not by will, but by surrender to his true identity. The CEO, the writer, the artist, all are prophets of the same truth. You are the living Word made flesh. Reality is not built in your time, but through it, a bridge of incidents arching unseen toward your assumption's fulfillment. What you call delay is divine preparation. What you name rejection is redirection. Joseph, sold into slavery and forgotten in prison, Genesis 41, did not curse his chains. He wore them as a scholar wears a robe, studying for the throne he would one day assume. His suffering was not punishment, but curriculum, each trial a lesson in stewardship. So too does the universe conspire in whispers, scripting your rise through seeming ruin. Take the founder. Her dreams met with no after no. Yet each failed pitch became a chisel, carving her vision into sharper focus. when she ceased to claw at outcomes and instead assumed success, the how unraveled without her effort. The investor she'd sought for years appeared only after she stopped chasing, proof that the architect works in the shadows, aligning players and props while you occupy the end. To walk this path is to recognize that life's no's are not denials but arrows, the job lost, the love that walked away, the deal that crumbled. These are not closed doors but detours carved by grace. The universe, in its infinite calculus, denies only to give more. Your task is not to dissect the bridge of incidents, but to walk it. Surrender the when and why, for the architect's plans are etched in eternity's ledger, far grander than mortal timetables. The sign of trust? You no longer rage at the veil, but lean into its mystery. Patience becomes awe as you witness the synchronicities stitching your path, the chance meeting, the sudden insight, the coincidence that crackles with purpose. Even rejection gleams with revelation, for it whispers, "Not this," because something greater awaits. The final truth: time is the loom, and you are both thread and weaver. The same hand that guided Joseph from pit to palace, that transformed the founder's despair into triumph, now guides you. Walk in faith, not sight. For in the kingdom of consciousness, delays are love letters from the divine. Signed, I am preparing you for wonders. To trust the architect is to realize every not yet is a promise. The curtain will rise not when you demand, but when the cast is ready. Until then, rest in the certainty that what is yours cannot be lost. Life is not a race, but a symphony. Listen for your cue. Your imagination is the anvil of the gods, a forge where realities are hammered into form, not by chance, but by the fire of focused vision. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Proverbs 29:18. Yet when a collective dares to dream as one, even the most fractured world mends. Consider the town splintered by generations of distrust. Its citizens, weary of division, closed their eyes together and painted mental portraits of unity. Shared laughter at festivals, hands clasped across cultural chasms, children dancing in a plaza, once scarred by strife. They did not merely hope. They assumed the feeling of wholeness until their hearts beat in rhythm. Months later, their first Unity Festival bloomed, not as a forced gesture, but as the inevitable fruit of their shared vision. The law is precise. Collective imagination is the loom of society. This is the divine workshop, the sacred space where individual sparks of thought fuse into a wildfire of creation. To visualize a communal garden is to plant its seeds in the minds of others. Tend it daily in your imagination. Smell the soil, feel the sun, hear the rustle of leaves. Soon, allies you've never met will arrive, spades in hand, compelled by a pull they cannot name. For assumptions, once amplified by many, become magnetic, drawing circumstances and collaborators into alignment. The awakened wield imagination not as escapism, but as covenant. Like the builders of Babel, Genesis 11:6, whose unified purpose nearly touched heaven, you hold the power to reshape realities through shared mental blueprints. A teacher envisions her students thriving, and parents subconsciously mirror her faith. A leader assumes prosperity for all, and the collective field shifts, turning lack into innovation. The workshop's rule is immutable. What is imagined with conviction by one, multiplied by many, becomes manifest. You no longer beg for change, you ignite it. Your visions grow so vivid, so felt, that others catch their light like kindling. The artist's dream of a muraled city inspires a movement. The entrepreneur's mental blueprint for sustainability becomes an industry standard. You are no longer a lone dreamer, but a catalyst, awakening others to their role as co-creators. The divine workshop has no walls. It thrives in the intersection of minds daring to assume a grander story. To craft realities is to recognize that every thought is a brick, every assumption a blueprint, and the world, in all its chaos, is but a construction site awaiting your sacred labor. The journey ends where it began, in the thunderous silence of I Am. Here, in the marrow of your being, the veil of separation burns away, revealing what has always been true. You are God, dreaming as man. The teacher who once saw her classroom as a battleground awoke to this truth. I am peace, she declared, not for herself alone, but as a decree for every restless mind before her. Gossip stilled, focus sharpened, and the room hummed with harmony, not because she forced change, but because she remembered her divine identity. Before Abraham was, I am. John 8:58 is not Christ's boast, but your birthright. This is the final law. There is no other. The beggar, the CEO, the lover, the foe, all are costumes worn by the one. To condemn another is to curse your reflection. To love them is to worship the self. The student's defiance, the partner's coldness, the world's chaos, these are not obstacles but mirrors, showing you where you still kneel to the illusion of separation. The sign of mastery? You no longer seek God. You are Him, moving through the world as a sunbeam inseparable from its source. The teacher's triumph was not in her students' compliance, but in her unshakable knowing. Their peace was hers, for they were her own being, multiplied. To live this truth is to walk as Jesus walked, not as a prophet set apart, but as a man who remembered his unity with the Father. Adversity now unfolds as sacrament. The argument, the loss, the ache of longing, each is an altar where you offer the lie of separation and reclaim your wholeness. Revision becomes reverence. Assumption becomes ascension. You need no techniques, no rituals, for you are the technique. The tools dissolve, leaving only the craftsman. The seeker and the sought are one. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop. Every breath, every thought, every heartbeat is God breathing, God thinking, God loving as you. The journey collapses into the instant. I am. Now close the book. Walk into the world as the answered prayer. For the end of all teaching is the beginning of eternal being, a flame that consumes the teacher, the taught, and the text, leaving only I am as the ash and the fire. And the light you sought was always your own shadow, cast by the sun of yourself. As Neville Goddard taught, the world is a mirror, forever reflecting what you have done within yourself. The peace, power, and fulfillment you seek are not separate from you. They are the birthright of your awakened consciousness. Embrace this truth as you step boldly into your divine calling, knowing that every desire already exists within the boundless realm of your imagination. Thank you for watching. If this message has stirred your soul, subscribe to this channel for deeper explorations of spiritual truth. Share this revelation with others, for in awakening one heart, you illuminate the path for many. The journey to fourth-dimensional living begins here. Press play on your next breakthrough.